Now I've heard it said that real men don't eat quiche. Ha! To that I say, poppycock! Real men most definitely do eat quiche. And girl, real men make quiche. And that's exactly what we're going to do today on Too Haute to Handle. It's quiche. Now, of course, the most wonderful part of a quiche is the actual pie dough, the pastry shell that it's in. If it's done right, it's tender, it's flaky, it's fall apart, buttery goodness. That is what you want couching your quiche. And we're going to make it all right here today. It's very simple. We're going to measure out, first of all, 2 cups of flour. Now, critical to getting this right is the butter that we're going to put in, and that butter has been in the refrigerator, it's just come out. In fact, it was in the freezer for the last 20 minutes, and cold butter, and this is vegetable shortening, it was also quite cold, are incorporated directly into the flour. This is 1/4 cup shortening, and we need this because of, well, our American flour is not exactly the same as European flours, where this recipe was originated in France. They use much more soft flour, soft grains, and we use a little bit harder grains in the mix. And so with butter alone, the batter would be kind of brittle, and the shortening helps to smooth it out. Now, as I say, this butter is very cold. This is 1 1/2 sticks of butter, or 6 ounces. What I would do is split it long ways once, turn it sideways and split it long ways again. And what's really critical here is as little possible contact with your fingers, because just your body heat will warm this butter up, and we want it to stay very cold. And again, same treatment as before, split it right down the middle, turn it over, split it right down the middle again, touching it with your hands as little as possible, chunking it up into these little small nuggets, and that's what we're going to incorporate in the flour. And again, it's so important, I can't stress to you how important it is that this butter be really, really cold. Now, we're going to work this into dough. Now, if you have any squeamishness about using your hands in the kitchen, I'd say get over it. Because really, there are 2 critical tools to have in the kitchen. One is a razor sharp knife and a willing pair of these. These are important, so make sure your hands are impeccably clean, and always, but dig in, use them. They're the best tool you've got. Now I'm just first initially getting this butter coated and with flour, the butter and the shortening coated, and I'm being very careful only to touch it with my fingertips, not the palms of my hands, because the palms of my hands transfer a lot of heat. There's less heat in the fingertips, so when you get these little chunks of butter with the flour, all you're doing is rolling them with your fingertips, kind of flattening them, but mashing that loose flour into it at the same time. So you're just kind of really essentially doing a twirl action like this, but with lumps of butter in your hand. So just dig in there. It's going to be a few minutes. You can do this with a mixer, but I don't think we get really the same result. And this doesn't take that long. And really, if you're going to be working with doughs, you should know how they feel, and how they feel along the various steps to them being done. So I'm just going to continue pinching these little delicious cubes of butter through the flour, and check back with you in a moment. And you just basically need to watch this, and you can tell from the consistency of it that we're about good. Now, you're not trying to get a perfect mix. This is still very rough, very lumpy, but most of them are at least somewhat flattened and have the flour kind of twisted and pinched in with them. And we're not going to work it too much, because these lumps of butter is exactly what is going to make this pastry crust so flaky and tender. Now this is very, very cold water coming right out of the refrigerator. Just pouring it into a measuring cup. And we're actually only going to just dribble it in by the tablespoon. And we'll go maybe somewhere between 5 and 7 tablespoons is all to set this, not too much. Just pour it in and kind of work it around with your cupped hand. So that was one. 2, work it in. You can see it's still kind of lumpy, but there's a step after this that you'll see that will pull this all together and make some of the best pastry you've ever had. 3 and maybe 4 tablespoons of very, very cold water. And it's important to do this rather quickly because you don't really want that butter to melt. You want it to maintain some of its characteristic. 5, 6. Just go carefully because we don't want to overdo it, and it doesn't really take that much. This doesn't really have to hold together into dough yet because our next step will really draw that into focus for you. I'm going to go 1 more tablespoon and just leave it at that. So that was, I believe, 7 tablespoons. And what comes next after this, you can see it's starting to hold together just a little bit, is a step called frissage. You see, it's not really one total mass, but the more you work it, the more it sticks together. Now, what we're going to do is put this out on a marble slab. And the reason why is because it's cold. It too has been in the refrigerator. And it will just help us. I'm going to turn all this loose dough and flour out onto the marble slab. And the frissage is you just kind of scoop it all together into a mound here. And you're going to take the heel of your hand and maybe 2 teaspoons full at a time. You're going to mash it down and spread it across the marble like that. Just put it out. Just like this. And this is actually the final blending. So it looks a little alien if you haven't seen this done before, but it really is the final blend, and it does a most excellent job of putting together those layers of butter and flour and butter and flour in those complex forms that will make it light, flaky, tender, and just delicious for your quiche. Now, take a little scraper, pull it back together, and that's fairly solid. And we'll do this just one more quick time. And don't be finicky about the dough. You don't have to be delicate with it. Just slam it and go for it. Frissage. Now, there it is. That is going to be one incredible freestanding pastry shell for your quiche. Or you can also do this for fruit tarts, which we'll do in future episodes. But right now we're talking quiche. All we do is pat that into a little ball, and we are going to cover that in plastic cling wrap, cover it up, put it into the refrigerator for 2 hours, because now this butter is already too soft to work it. If we start rolling it now, it'll be very, very sticky, and also we want to have a chance for those glutens that have been worked up to relax. So we're going to put it in plastic wrap in the refrigerator for a minimum of 2 hours, and then we'll come and roll out our dough. Now this is what your pie dough is like after it's been in the refrigerator for 2 hours. We had it wrapped in plastic wrap, and it is pretty doggone hard. That is exactly what we want. I don't want to touch it too much. I don't want to transfer body heat. But we want that butter to have hardened back up and for those glutens to relax. Now, before we roll it out, though, we are going to talk about our quiche pan. Now, this is important for making the freestanding pastry crust, because actually when it's served, it's not going to be in a pan at all. This crust is going to hold its own form. Now, this is a false bottom pan. See, it pops right out there. And if you don't have one of these, you can use a regular pie pan, or there are some cake pans that have false bottoms. But before we do anything, we got to butter that pan so that our quiche doesn't stick to it. I'm just going to take some room temperature butter there. And again, your hands are your best tool. Just dig right in there. Smear it all around on the bottom side. And make sure you work it into the side, the fluting on the inside of the pan there as well. You get it absolutely 100% covered. And there you go, a buttered pan. Now we're going to be working on this marble slab again because of its ability to keep very cool. So, undo the plastic, and as I said, it's hard, and so the only way about that is to beat it into shape. I'm just going to take a little flour and get it on my board so we're not sticking. Some on there too, top and bottom. Now, the way to get that started is to beat it. You don't have to pussyfoot around with it. There's nothing to be delicate about. Smash it. Smash it to get it to the initial roll-out shape. Smash and turn, smash and turn. And there you go. Now, I'll kind of pinch back in the sides where it started to crack from the smashing, but keep it well floured underneath, and I'll show you how to roll it out. Don't start all the way from the edge. Start in just a little bit, and as you roll, don't roll all to the edge. Leave a little bit off. But we do want to flatten that out, and with each flatten, turn it a little bit. Again, don't roll all the way to the edge. Turn. Flatten and turn. Just keep turning it, flatten it a little bit. We got to get it to a size that's actually much bigger than our pan because we want it to overlap. And again, we want to work fairly quickly because the longer we wait, the more that butter melts and the stickier it will tend to get. So after about a certain amount, it's not perfectly round, it doesn't need to be, but we just need to make sure that it does fit our pan. We're a little thin on that side, so I'm going to do a little overlap to patch there. Turn it again and give it one final push out this direction. Make it a little bit longer in that way. Good. Now, to put it in, I find the easiest way is to fold it back on itself and to fold it over one more time so you've got a quarter, and then put this point right in the center of the pan and unfold it out. And there you have it. Now what we're going to do is pick up the sides here. And we want the side of our pan, the side of our pastry shell to be thicker than the rest of it because it's got to do the work of holding it up, making it a freestanding. Alright, so we'll pick up this dough from the sides and push it down into the corner. Push it down in there. All the way around. Push it down, down, down. So that is really thick on the back edge. Then, once it's all the way in there, then we want to go to the bottom and push it back up the side so that we're pushing into that fluting on the side of the pan so we get a nice shape for it. Once that's all up and over, just kind of push it over the lip, and any excess we'll just take right off with the rolling pin. Just roll right on top of it, forward and back. and that little extra bit will come right off. And if you have left over, you can use it for the next pie. You can use it for a little miniature quiche probably if you want to do one of those, but right now we're just concentrating on this one. So as we start to move it around and push it up, we're just going to give it a little decorative edge with the dull part of the knife. We'll squeeze this up between our fingers, and as it comes up, just give it a little mark, a little indentation with the back of the knife. Now we have our oven set very, very hot. It's going to be at 425 degrees right now. And this crust, when we're ready, is going to go in there for an initial setting of 10 minutes to get it set. And there you go. That's all it needs. Just push it up. Give it that little decorative edge there. Now while that's there, you just want to take your fork and poke some little holes into the bottom of it. This is so that the bottom of the pastry shell doesn't puff up while it's in the oven. Give some little vents for the steam so it doesn't make it puff out. And also, to add to that protection, you're going to take here just a piece of aluminum foil, and we're going to butter that as well. Get a little smear there, and once again, use your hands. You don't have to be terribly neat. This is not precision work for this part, but this is going to go in against the pie shell to hold down some pie weights. Alright, so put the butter side down onto that pastry shell. And the reason we're putting that is because we're going to put in pie weights. Now these are ceramic balls. That's about 2 packages of them really. But they're just weights to make the pie crust hold its shape through its initial heating. Now you don't have to use ceramic. I've seen people use dried beans, pinto beans, lima beans in the dry stage, garbanzo beans that they just keep forever and bake over and over and over again. So our oven is at 425 degrees, and we're going to put this whole contraption right on the center shelf for about 10 minutes. Now this has been in the oven for 10 minutes. I've just taken it out. The pie crust is under there, and these are your pie weights. So just going to fold in the aluminum foil that was holding them in place and pull this right out. Now this is not fully formed yet. I mean, it is fully formed, but it's not baked. All we've done is initially to get it to slightly set here. Now we're going to put it right back into the same 425 degree oven for 5 more minutes. In the meantime, while those pie shells are in the oven, we're going to start to crispy fry some bacon. And this I have is turkey bacon. However, you can use whatever kind you want. If you use the traditional pork bacon or turkey bacon, it's entirely your choice, but we're just going to crisp fry that. Okay, now our pastry shell has come out of the oven after about 5 more minutes in there. You can see it doesn't look nearly as wet looking. It was slightly puffed up, but just one little poke with the fork in the middle. Let the air on down. It's ever so slightly brown around the edges, and that's the perfect point you want it for being able to pour in the rest of the wetter ingredients and having it keep its seal. So we're just going to keep that aside until we get our bacon fully crispy fried, and then I'll show you about the rest of the filling. Alright, now after that bacon was crispy fried, I set it out on some paper towels, top and bottom, just to leach away the excess grease and oil that it rendered. And what we're going to do now is just crunch them up and get them ready for the bottom of the quiche. The addition of the bacon is what makes quiche a quiche Lorraine. So, it's pretty simple. Just stack it up and chop it up. And the little thin strips just like that. And that's all we're going to need there. And what we do, this is still warm but not hot out of the oven. Take those bacon bits and just sprinkle them all over the bottom of our pastry shell. And now we are ready for the filling. Now for the interior of the quiche is essentially we're going to make a custard. Also it's basically just, I guess, what you could call an egg pie if you want to get right down to it. But we're going to start off with 3 eggs cracked into the mixing bowl, to which we are going to add some liquid. And that is, I have a cup and a half of milk and cream. It's half milk, half cream. So 3/4 cup of milk, 3/4 cup of cream. Pour those right in with the 3 eggs. And then I'm going to add a little nutmeg. I don't get the powdered kind. I buy the actual nutmegs. You can see them, they look just like that. Little rock looking thing. We've got a multiplane grater, and we're just going to grate a little bit of nutmeg right into the top of the mix. Don't need a whole lot, just enough to give it a subtle hint of that flavor. And we'll put it all together with our trusty wire whip. Just mix it up, make sure the eggs get broken in there. Give it a nice stir, and that is just about it. That is your filling for the quiche. Now, before we pour it in, I'm going to get a cookie sheet underneath that quiche just in case there are any little leaks in that crust that I didn't expect. Okay, so we'll take our cookie sheet and just put the quiche right on top of it. That way if there are any leaks, it's not on the floor of our oven. It's contained right all in the pan. Now, a word of note, we have lowered the temperature on the oven considerably. It was 425 to get this pastry shell set, but we've lowered it down to 375 now, and it's going to bake at 375 for about 45 minutes. But here's the way we go. We've got the bacon in the bottom of our pan. I've got some grated cheese here. Normally I was looking for Swiss cheese, but oddly enough couldn't find Swiss cheese in the marketplace today. So I went with Jarlsberg, which is great, very mild flavored cheese, and will work just perfectly for this application. So I didn't measure how much I had. You could see it was just basically like a cereal bowl size for, and the exact proportion doesn't matter. Just use the cheese to cover up your bacon there. If you have more, if you have less, it will be just fine. Now this mixture, I'm going to pour all of it right over the cheese and into the bowl, and we want to get this to the oven as quickly as we can. So that it doesn't start leaking out into a 375 oven for 45 minutes. Alright, this has come out of the oven after 45 minutes. So we're going to put it right onto a wire rack and let it cool for about 5 minutes, and then we'll unmold it and take it out and show it in its full glory. It's puffed up a little high right now, and as it cools off it'll settle back down. It'll never be as high as this again. It'll kind of even out into a flatter top. Alright, so now about 5 minutes have gone by, or maybe a little more. It's settled on down. Now, to unmold this, I will usually take a can or something like this. We're going to get this out of its false bottom. Just set a can on there, set the bottom of that pan, and then your rim should just come straight off. There's your freestanding pastry shell. Alright, take that pan out of the way. And then the false bottom needs to come off. So I just lift from an edge, slide a flat little spatula underneath, and go around. What we want to do is get this off of this metal and onto the cooling grate so that the bottom of the crust won't get soggy as it cools. We want that air to be able to circulate around it to keep it nice and crisp and fresh. We'll just hold on to the bottom of our pan and slide that right off onto the rack. There we go. We'll let this cool for about another 20 minutes or so until it's all the way cool, and there you'll have it. You slice into that Quiche Lorraine. Alright, now after this has cooled for a significant amount of time, we'll just transfer it over onto our serving tray. This is just an old cake decorating stand, but it'll serve for what we're doing there. And there you have it, Quiche Lorraine. Now, let me just cut into a piece of this to show you what it's like. And now this quiche looks just delicious. That crust is so perfect, so tender and flaky, and it just, seriously folks, will knock the socks off of any kind of pre-made crust that you would buy in your grocer's freezer section. But that's it. A wonderful crust. Get that light layer of bacon on the bottom and creamy, eggy, cheesy custard on top. What is this like? I just can't resist. Oh wow. You've got to try this. So good. And there you have it, Quiche Lorraine and its very own freestanding pastry shell. And that pastry shell is so good, so flaky, so tender and buttery and delicious. You'll never want to buy anything out of a store freezer case again, ever. It's foolproof. Make it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. That's all for today on Too Haute to Handle. Come back next time and see what's cooking.